Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. I'm your host, W.J. Sheehan. Hello, everybody, and once again, thank you for joining us on the show. I'm W.J. Sheehan, the author of the series Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters. All of the books in the series can be found on our webpage, BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com. Just click on the store link, and it will take you where you want to go. Now, if you've seen something, we encourage you to say something. So click on our contact link and say hello, or report what you have seen or experienced in regards to the Bigfoot monster. We would love to hear from you. And by the way, your purchase of any book in any form helps us to keep the ball rolling. So please do buy one and show some support for what it is we are doing. And now, we have a great show lined up here today. And to start things off, here's my brother Kevin. How are you, Kev?
I'm doing great. How about you, Bill?
Very good. Boy, I'm really cranked up for this episode today. And I know you got something good waiting in the wings, as do I.
Yeah, we got a nice crisp fall day here. So
Yes.
We're going to go up to one of my favorite fall states, the Green Mountain State of Vermont.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And being in Vermont, I'm sure you've got something else in mind for today besides some maple syrup.
There won't be any maple syrup. Maybe a little bit of leaf peeping, though.
Unbelievable. So what have you dug up in your cryptids in the news and history report this week?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about two Bigfoot sightings in the Green Mountain State. And the sightings originate with two different individuals that coincidentally both describe themselves as Bigfoot and Sasquatch researchers.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's people out there doing their due diligence to stay hot on the trail of the hairy man, and I'm grateful there's guys and gals out there doing it, you know?
No, I'm with you. So the first sighting we talk about comes from Frank. Frank, I apologize in advance. I'm going to mispronounce your name, but it's Sayekiensky. But from now on, I'm going to call him Frank.
Okay. That's a mouthful, man.
Yeah, and his account comes from about 9 years ago in September 2010. And Frank said that he caught a glimpse and an image of a Bigfoot on a trail camera that was stationed on part of his property in a part of Vermont called Hobarton. And he has a cool image on the internet, and I'll put the image up on our website, BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com, under this episode. But it's a pretty cool image, and I'm going to describe it to you all and do my best to give you a visual image until you get to see the actual picture. But first,
Awesome.
We'll start with Hobarton, the town of Hobarton, where Frank owned his property and caught this image. It's in central Vermont, just west of the Killington Ski Resort, which I don't know if you've ever been up there, Bill, to Killington way back when.
Yeah, I haven't been up to Killington, but I've been up there camping.
Okay.
And my recollection is poor. I'm not even sure where we were.
Okay. Well, Killington, I went skiing up there years ago, and it's one of the coldest places I've ever been skiing. So it's chilly. It can be chilly up there. So
Yeah.
the evidence Frank posted was pretty cool image. Again, it came from a trail camera, which, by the way, Bill, we should be seeing a lot more evidence over time with the advent of all these trail cameras out there, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. And the photograph isn't super conclusive. And I don't know, does this ring a bell with you, Bill? Did you ever see this picture, or can you recall seeing it?
I have not.
Okay, so I'll
But
describe it.
let me jump on you for a second. You talked about Killington being very cold. I have a coworker who's like a real avid skier.
Yep.
And he goes up someplace in northern Vermont called Mad River.
Oh,
have you ever
Mad
heard
River
of that?
Glen. I've skied there too.
Oh my God! I mean, apparently Mad River is like. Am I correct in saying like you have to be like a member or something?
It didn't used to be that way, but I wouldn't be surprised today if it was.
Yeah, he made it sound like there's very few people there, but it's really like crazy deep skiing and like everything that, a fanatical skier would want and then some,
Yeah, I haven't been up there skiing in about 20 years. And
Wow.
But back then, you could do glade skiing, so ski among the trees, which typically you only got to do out west.
Right.
In
And
western
that's
US.
exactly what Paul does there. He's into that going in and out of the trees.
Exactly.
No real cut trails.
Exactly.
And by the way, perfect place to get in touch with a Bigfoot, I'm sure.
Exactly. So let me tell you about this trail cam image. And again, I'll put it up on the website when we post this podcast. But picture in your mind a Bigfoot, and you're looking at him from what appears to be his left side, and he's kind of bent down, still on his feet, but with his chest against his knees. And again, you're looking at him from the side, almost like he's picking something up off of the ground or looking at something on the ground.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's black and white, like trail cam footage. But, if you look at it carefully, it looks like you can see like his side profile and his face. You can definitely see the head, and it is almost like it has no neck and really big, like bulbous shoulders.
Wow.
Like we often hear described.
Now you're looking at it, Kev. I haven't seen this
I'm
yet.
looking
And
at it
I can't
right
wait.
now. Yeah, it's cool.
But,
I'll post it, and everybody
What's
can
your
see it.
opinion of what you're seeing?
I wish it was like a Bigfoot standing on its feet looking straight at you so you could see all the detail. But of course, even if it was that, the skeptics would say that, it wasn't standing like a Bigfoot should stand,
Yeah.
But it's cool. I mean, I'm interested in what you think of it and what our listeners think of it too when they see it. So,
Yeah.
And then it has like some of these it's black and white, so you can't tell what color it is. But imagine like white spots. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them on the side of its upper back. And I don't know if it's like it's got a little bit of the mange, or maybe there's something stuck to its fur, or maybe it's something else,
Yeah. That's interesting. Again, I'm not the one that subscribes to men running around in the woods in costumes.
Well, yeah, and especially running by trail cameras, kind of odd.
Yeah, and why go there? I mean, just why go there? Why does everything have to be some Fruit Loop running around in the woods, or some fraud, or something else? Why can't it just be that the guy caught an image of a Bigfoot just like he could have caught an image of a deer or a fox or a coyote or whatever?
Yep. Exactly.
So Yep. Wow, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, so it's good stuff. So, and the image shows up on, it's called Sawyer Loftus Free Press. So we can cite them for this image. Looks like you can buy the image too on the internet. So that's that account. Took place in September 2010. And then the next account appeared within the last 2 months. And the account was written about in the Bar Montpelier Times Argus newspaper. So from, Bar Montpelier, Vermont.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. And there's a picture on this one too of the witness of the account. His name is Chris Knoll, and Chris apparently is again a pretty strong Bigfoot researcher. And he's holding in the picture a plaster cast of a footprint that he believes was made by a Bigfoot, and in the image he shows, and in the article I'll talk about here, he also claims to have found some structures, wood log structures in the woods that he believes have been made by Bigfoot.
Wow. These are in the same area, Kev, or pretty far apart from each other?
Yes, so he's a little further north, up near Stowe, Vermont, and it's up near south of Smuggler's Notch. But
okay.
Really cool place. So he saw it in Montpelier, and I don't know, Bill, if you rack your memory, that's the capital of Vermont. And it's also interesting. I do a lot of crossword puzzles. It's always a very hard clue to remember in crossword puzzles. It's like famous French city in Vermont, and you're like, I don't know, but it's always Montpellier.
I'd have to pass in that clue, bro, because I don't have a clue.
So if you remember when we used to go up to New Hampshire when we were kids, we would go to Franconia Notch.
Yes.
And Montpelier is west of Franconia Notch, but about the same height in a northerly direction as Franconia Notch. So in a pretty rural part of Vermont, for sure.
Yeah, and that whole area up there, I mean, you remember going to New Hampshire, you'd be in some of these areas that were like a little touristy, people around, things for people to go and do. But as soon as you drove a little bit outside of them, I mean, you were like immediately in the thick of it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we went up last year. I don't know if you remember, I was telling you about it. I sent you a couple of pictures, but we went up looking at the leaves in October and in Stowe, Vermont, which is a really small town, but kind of a picturesque New England town. Yeah. And went up there, and then we went to a super cool Oktoberfest there, which, by the way, they had a pumpkin chucking contest at the same time, which was awesome. These big trebuchets and catapults chucking pumpkins 5,000 feet. Can't miss that. Be good to throw them at a Bigfoot, maybe, And then we also went hiking up in Smuggler's Notch up there, and that was pretty darn rural, hiking around up there,
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing up there.
No.
And which goes to prove my point again. The 9.5 million square miles in North America, how many of them actually have somebody's feet walking around in them?
No, exactly. So, and this one, this article was written by Stephen Mills, a staff writer on the Bar Montpelier Times Argus newspaper. And, this image, let me tell you a little bit about the structure. So the structure is made out of kind of dead logs, about 4 inches in diameter, I would say. But very importantly, the structure is nothing like that amazing structure that was shown in the Marble Mountain sighting in Northern California that we went through by Jim Mills and that youth group. Remember, it was like fresh trees that were bent over and broken, like 6 inches in diameter, all kind of woven together with branches. This image looks like maybe it was an old nest, or maybe it wasn't even honestly, to me, maybe it wasn't even a Bigfoot shelter. So,
okay.
But let's talk about the guy, because he is, he's got a lot of credibility. So, this guy, Christopher Knoll, that lives up there, he has he's seen these stick shelters all around this area, and then he's also recorded and published audio recordings that are, extremely strange, very, very loud. Like he describes it as being able to feel the sound in your chest in the middle of the night. So we've heard about that before with some other sightings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one woman said it sounded like a sound weapon.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
A weapon.
Exactly.
Like, how the heck do you come up with that description? It sounded like a weapon.
Yep.
But
And this guy, Christopher Noel, I mean, his background gives him some credibility. So he's a Yale University philosophy graduate. So he went to Yale. So, he's not a dummy by any means. And he previously taught at the Vermont College of Fine Arts. And apparently he's written books and published writings about Bigfoot, including one that helps identify Sasquatch stick structures. So
wow.
We're going to have to start to look for some of these. And then these days, he also leads what's called Wild Vermont expeditions with targeted trips in Vermont for people interested in immersing themselves in folklore and legend, which I guess
Kev,
Bigfoot is part of that.
Let's give, as we're talking about Chris here, let's give him a little plug.
Sure.
How do you spell his name so people can look for his books?
Yeah, so it's like Noel, like Christmas, Noel.
Oh, okay.
Christopher, yeah.
Christopher Noel or Noel.
Or Noel, maybe it's Noel. I was pronouncing it Noel, but maybe it's Noel.
Yeah, I mean, we got to support people who are supporting the cause here. So
Absolutely.
People, go out there.
Check out his writings. And, hey, if you're up in Vermont, go do one of these Wild Vermont expeditions. Maybe I'll check it out next time I'm up there.
Absolutely.
But I'm definitely going to check out the pumpkin chucking again because that was awesome. I can't resist like a 2,000-pound trebuchet. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, my goodness.
So Christopher says in this article, and I'll quote him, he says, I've been researching this species quietly and privately for a number of years. Now I've decided to come out and reach out to others who may have information to share with me and learn what I have found out, so we can begin to fill in the picture of the habits, the roots, and the behavior of our local population up in Montpelier, Vermont. Wow. So I think, that's pretty good, Bill. It's just like we always say, if you see something, say something. And we're interested in hearing it too. At our website, and then also, reach out to Christopher and let him know, especially if you know something about the Bigfoot in the local population in Montpelier, Vermont.
Yeah, and that's exactly what one of our listeners, Nate Bowling down in Alabama, is doing. He's a Bigfoot friend of mine. I've talked to him a few times. He's assembling like a library, a place where data can be shared and exchanged about sightings, castings, findings, audio, whatever you've got. They're looking to create a place where people can go and exchange ideas and also findings with each other.
Yep.
So it's kind of cool.
It is cool. And Christopher goes on, this is pretty interesting, and it shows, this is a smart guy. So he says that he's unfazed by questions about the veracity of previous reported sightings recorded on video that were discounted by anthropologists who declared the creatures were humans disguised as Bigfoot and revealed by their human gait and movement, calling the whole genre into question. So he puts in quotes here in the article, it's hard to boil it down, but the best evidence we have so far, even though it's 51 years old, is the Patterson-Gimlin film, shot in Northern California. And he says that it's possibly the second most viewed film footage after the footage of JFK's assassination in Dallas in 1963. And, of course, we're super familiar with the Patterson-Gimlin film. But it's interesting. He says here that the consensus, referring to the Patterson-Gimlin film, is that outside of the circle of pure cynics, so outside of that, by people who have analyzed the footage with an open mind, is that the limb proportions and the gait are clearly not human. And then he goes on and says, by all rights, the existence of the species should have been confirmed by that footage alone.
Yeah.
Let alone the thousands of people that have seen things since then.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I've looked at that footage many times, and I'm telling you, as somebody who studied kinesiology and myology and A and P, and I look at that thing, and on cue, the muscles move attached to the skin in the way that they should be moving for a creature built such as that. Walking, turning, arm swing. You can physically see the attached muscles with the skin and the fur or hair, whatever you want to call it, moving proportionately with each movement that the creature makes.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. You can see the flexion, the extension. Everything is happening on time, and that doesn't happen with a costume.
No, I agree. Yeah,
Crazy.
he goes on and he says, I think anyone who spends even 2 hours looking into the matter with skepticism, but with an open mind, will come away thinking differently. Either the species exists, or the tens of thousands of reports that have been filed over the decades by people, witnesses, many whom don't want to use their names for fear of ridicule, all have to be incorrect. So pretty cool. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. So then he goes on and he talks about some of the most recent things that he's heard. So I'm going to walk you through there. So he said he's returning from a visit to a man in Worcester on Wednesday who said that he heard strange calls in the woods and had recorded the sounds. And Christopher says he has screams in the middle of the night coming from the mountain that rattled the walls in his house. And he's been a hunter and guide for 40 years and knows all of the ordinary sounds of the forest. So this guy who heard this has some pretty good credibility, right?
Yeah.
He's
yeah.
not city folk, as we would say.
Right.
And he never heard anything remotely like it. And when he first heard it, and now he has heard it a number of times, he said the volume is just on a completely different level in the sense that it rattles windows and walls, and you can feel it in your chest, even though you know it's no closer than 100 yards away.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
I mean, not me, but others are saying, the guy's full of beans. No, he's not full of beans. He knows exactly what he's hearing and not hearing, and he's sharing that with you. So just listen and learn something from the guy.
Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then Christopher gives us an email to go out and contact him, which is montpelliersasquatch@gmail.com. And then he has some of his videos up on YouTube. I'm sure you can just search on those, Christopher Noel. And then he has a website that's called thebigfootportal.com / Christopher-Noel.
Awesome.
Pretty cool. So a couple of good encounters up in very rural Vermont. And no doubt, me hiking around in the woods up there many times, pretty rural place. If there's some hairy men out there, I'm sure they're hanging out in northern Vermont.
There's no doubt about it. And so there you have it. When listeners write in or people say, well, where can I see a Bigfoot? There's another place where you could see one if you were out there looking and doing your due diligence, Vermont.
There you go.
I mean, we're going coast to coast, north, south, east, west, Canada. There are people running into these creatures in numerous locations. And again, here you have Chris doing his due diligence. You've got a hunter hearing the roars or the howls, a guy that knows what he's listening to and knows what he's not listening to. How do you discredit all of these people?
Yeah, and that's Christopher's point.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The guy, Chris, doesn't have an axe to grind, and neither does the other fellow who's reporting what he's hearing rattling the windows on his house.
Exactly.
What does he gain? What do you gain?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Tough to see a gain, especially from somebody who's anonymous too, right? I mean, like many of these are.
Yeah, I mean, so Chris is writing books, and I'm going to look up his books. But nobody's getting rich around here. When I ask you to go out and buy a book to help support us, I'm not making millions over here recording audiobooks on Bigfoot and whatnot. If anything, there's a ridiculous amount of money spent on my end for studio time and time spent now doing the audiobooks that you have no idea. So when I say something, I'm just basically asking you to help me out so I can keep the ball rolling here, you know. Kevin will vouch for the fact that I'm not driving around in a C-Class Mercedes.
Very cool.
That was great, Kev.
Good stuff.
And listen, before I get going here with this account, I want to give a shout-out to a friend of the podcast, Tracy. So, Tracy, if you're out there, big shout-out to you, and kudos for being a part of the show. And I say that because what I'm about to get into here, was kind of at the behest of Tracy. Mm-hmm. My dear listeners, once again, little did you know when you tuned into this podcast today that you were about to enter a realm beyond all space and time. It is a place which you will never forget. You are about to enter the Bigfoot Zone. All right. If you were waiting for the next installment of the Bigfoot Zone, here it comes. This account is going to blow your mind. And coming into this tale, I'm going to warn you that this may be the freakiest sighting that I have ever heard. And I ask you to follow along as Marion Lane and her brother Chris weave this amazing story. In July of '84, a group of about 20 people and the two of us had planned to head into the Shasta National Forest and hike up to Dead Falls Lake for a little overnighter with guitars and beers. If you've never been there, Mount Eddy Lake and Dead Falls Lake sit in what I would call a bowl surrounded by mountain peaks. There isn't much of a shoreline to speak of. Instead, the surrounding hills and trees abruptly meet the edge of the water. It's a fantastic and desolate spot, and it's a great destination for those who want to hike in and crash on a blanket once you can't stay awake any longer. We began the night's festivities, and it was turning out to be a pretty good evening. We had some campfire sing-alongs, some hot dogs, and quite a lot of beer. We first noticed the blue light at about 2 a.m. This light was emanating from thousands of feet up, glowing over one of the northern peaks. Considering that there isn't anything out here in this hour of the night aside from people like us, it was a bizarre sight. Needless to say, it had all of our attention. Some of us sat and others stood as we watched the blue light grow in intensity. It seemed as though the unknown source of the light was about to come over the peak. About 10 minutes later, there it was. It was miles away, but we could make out now a large glowing disk exuding what appeared to be a combination of extremely bright blue and white light. From a distance, it almost appeared like the disk was alive. I know this is really weird, but you will know why I mention it in a minute. If it hadn't had our attention before, it certainly had our attention now. It slowly made its way over the peak and was gradually making its way down into the valley in which we were gathered. As it began its descent, beams of light started to emanate from different sides of the object. They moved from one side to the other, flashing on and off as it appeared to be scouring the terrain. Some members of the group were already getting antsy and afraid, especially the girls, but there was nowhere to run and hide, especially since the searchlights were so bright. It was getting closer and closer to our position. We realized that whatever it was could certainly see our blazing fire. So some of us started to throw dirt on the flames and squirting them with beer. Others were filling empty bottles with water from the lake in order to extinguish it. It was difficult to gauge the distance and size of this object, but it was slowly coming towards the lake and the entire landscape was glowing beneath it. All of us could now see that the craft appeared to be organic. Now it was glowing with a yellowish white color, but bright blue still swirled around its base, which appeared like pigment being mixed in a can of fresh paint. It was beyond my wildest imagination. Another 10 minutes passed when half of the group said that they were getting the heck out of there, and the rest of us stayed. In movies, the people who run always get attacked, and I wasn't planning to be one of them. Might be a smart move, huh, Kevin?
I don't know. You can make the argument that you want to run faster than those next to you.
Now, this craft had now reached the other end of the lake, which was still a considerable distance away from us. By this time, I could now see that this disc was at least 200 feet across, when all of a sudden it stopped and began to pulse, growing brighter and then dimmer, like a heartbeat. All of the searchlights had stopped moving, and a ring of fuzzy, multicolored lights started to circle its outer edge. They were red, green, and yellow, and weren't sharp beams like the searchlights. Our fire was completely out now, and we were standing in the pitch dark, totally awed by what we were seeing, as this thing hovered over this one spot for almost 20 minutes. Suddenly, a wide column of powder blue light flashed from its base to the ground below, as the craft continued to pulse. From our vantage point, it was little more than a speck, but there was something being drawn up from the ground within this tube of light. The thing stopped about midway between the ground and the craft, literally suspended in midair within the light. Everything stayed still for another 10 or 15 minutes. But then several other specks started to descend from the craft's base. These specks were much smaller than the first. Again, from the distance we were, there was no way of telling what any of these things were. The descending specks stopped in the middle of the tube right where the first thing was located. After a half an hour of stillness, all of the specks that had descended from the craft were drawn back upward and vanished from our sight. However, the other one remained suspended in the middle of the tube. Suddenly, the craft stopped pulsing and began to grow brightly again, illuminating the entire lake and the countryside below, and then it started to move. It glided slowly and silently over the lake, heading directly at us. Not a word was spoken among those who remained. We were awestruck and silent, staring in utter amazement. It was now only a football field away and coming closer, and I could now see that this was, in fact, a glowing structure. It was definitely a large disc, but it had to be 400 feet wide, not the 200 I had originally thought. It was enormous. The shaft of blue light remained totally intact and unmoving as the ship itself moved now over the lake. The water started to grow choppy, just like it would on a windy day. However, it was only choppy within the confines of where the light contacted the lake's surface. Everything around the perimeter was still calm. The light was drawing on and or disturbing the water as it passed over it. Now I could see beyond the shadow of a doubt that the speck that had been lifted up from the earth and into the tube of light was a gigantic Bigfoot. It looked like it was in a state of suspended animation, being held in the light some 75 feet off the lake's surface. It didn't move an inch and was completely aglow in the soft blue light. Pretty freaky, heck.
Unbelievable.
Now, the saucer passed just to our east, and we all turned like automatons, watching it move away. Suddenly, there was a bright flash of light, and it was all over. The disc was completely gone. It had not flown away at a high rate of speed. It vanished. We stood in a daze for a few moments, almost as if we had been taken over by some type of mystic force while these events had unfolded. Seeing the Bigfoot motionless within the tube of light was unbelievable, to say the least, and what the connection was between it and the craft is still unknown to all of us. We simply saw what we saw.
Freaky.
Really freaky, man.
Man, I didn't know where you were going. You know, first off, like you're talking about looking up into the hills at the blue lights, and I'm thinking, whoa, this is like an original Dracula thing. You know, they got the blue lights up in the woods around Vlad the Impaler's castle in Romania. and then we got these giant, UFOs. And I thought, for a minute there, I thought maybe Bigfoot was going to sneak up behind them and bop them on the head while they were watching the UFO. But I didn't
Happy
picture
Halloween.
him being lifted up in like the tractor beam. Wild. Yeah, wild.
Yeah, very bizarre. And to me, it was like, this craft had come down for a reason, not that they were there. It was coming there.
Yeah.
And it was almost like it was looking around
Yep.
for a Bigfoot or its Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this was some type of created creature. This particular event where this thing was like owned by them or created by them.
Right, so not necessarily a natural flesh and blood Bigfoot.
Right, I mean some type of being.
Yeah, no, certainly could be.
It's so far out there that what are you going to say? It's just a very bizarre encounter that happens to include the sighting of what was described as an enormous Bigfoot suspended in this soft blue column of light.
Yeah, in the tractor beam.
Yeah, I mean, whew.
Well, that is crazy. And that happened in you said Shasta National Forest, so that should be like Northern California.
Yeah, Dead Falls Lake region.
Okay.
So apparently these young people, maybe it was a regular spot for them if they had the time and the energy to go up there and get lost for the night,
Yeah, it sounds like a beautiful place, other than the 400-foot wide UFO and the Bigfoot hanging in the beam of blue light. Other than that, it's awesome.
It's awesome. Perfect. Oh, man.
Holy cow.
And the fact that we're pouring all of our beers out to put the fire out.
That's a
problem. That kind of
of
stinks.
That's a big foul right there.
Unless, of course, it's Meisterbrow.
Well, yeah.
In that case, we brought it to extinguish the fire.
Good old Meisterbrow. Not one of our sponsors today, apparently.
Yeah, no, Meisterbrow is not a sponsor of Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, nor are we affiliated with the brand.
Wow, that is amazing. Could you imagine seeing some craft above you that you're estimating to be 400 feet across?
Yeah. I mean, what is that? That's 100 feet more than a football field.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it's a disc, which he said it was, it's obviously when we look at a football field, we're looking at a rectangle.
Right.
This thing was a 400-foot in diameter plate.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Flying around in the sky. I mean, that is freaking nuts.
Yeah, I'm not ready for that.
Wow, Kev.
I'm not ready to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is bizarre stuff.
Whoa.
Now, what do we got today from our listeners? Anything groovy going on?
Yeah, we got some good listener mail from all around, as usual. So we'll start out with Stanislaw in Hungary. One of the coolest cities I've ever been to. They don't say, Stanislaw doesn't say they're from Budapest, but I used to go to Budapest on a regular basis on business, and it's a super cool city there on the Danube River.
Wow.
And Stanislaw says, thanks for the great podcast and all the work that you do. How fast do you think a Bigfoot can run?
Whoa.
I assume Stanislaw means when he's not being lifted up into a UFO in a tractor beam.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll tell you what. How fast can they run? I mean, we have accounts of them running down elk and deer. So, you know, I go back to what I see the animals around my house doing. I mean, when the deer spring into action, I don't know how fast they're going. I mean, they got to be running like 30 miles an hour or something, maybe more.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they can really get the giddy up going and take off when they're spooked.
Yeah, and one thing that's consistent in all of the sightings, descriptions, even this trail cam photograph that we talked about today, is, you know, they're so muscular and trim. And then, of course, you know, they're typically 8 or 10 feet tall, so they have quite a long stride as well. So, you know,
yeah,
even a fast walk, they're cruising.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Kev, because a lot of people have said it appeared effortless the way the thing was walking. But then they realized when they went to the area where they saw it, how far it had traveled and how quickly, apparently effortlessly walking along.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just a gait of a walk, not a run.
Exactly. I mean, they're giant creatures.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. These things can really boogie.
Yeah, yeah. So that's from Stanislaw in Hungary. Thanks for listening over in Hungary. And then we're going to go to Linda in Bangor. I'm guessing it's Bangor, Maine, maybe. She doesn't specify. And she says, I am a bus driver, and I saw a Bigfoot early one morning walking a tree line.
Huh.
Oh, that's pretty cool, Linda. We'd like to know more from you. Make sure
Absolutely.
we get some more details. Maybe send in your phone number, and Bill will give you a call.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah, so she saw it walking in a tree line, and she says, do you think they are more nocturnal? I thought it rather odd to see such a thing in daylight. Great show and great rapport between the two of you. Thanks so much, Linda.
Wow. Cool. Well, you know, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Linda. That's fantastic. A couple of things come to mind right off the bat. Number one, I had a bus driver, and it's in one of the accounts in my book, one of my books, who was having a coffee before beginning the morning route, allowing the bus to warm up next to some woods. And a Bigfoot came out and rocked the bus and slammed the back doors as she was trying to drive out of there.
Whoa.
Yeah, she actually lost her job. She told the truth about what happened, and they posthumously showed her the door.
That's not good.
No. But also, the majority of the sightings that I've got on record are daytime. So I know some people think they're more nocturnal, or maybe that's part of the spook aspect of going out with some of these groups to creep you out in the dark.
Right.
But a lot of the people are just seeing these boogers during the daytime.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that all comes from, but you know, I have to say like 6 or 7 out of 10 are daytime sightings.
Well, and also, Bill,
hers.
They're hard to see in the daytime. How the heck are you going to see them at night? I mean, unless they run across in front of your headlights crossing the road, which, you know, we've seen accounts like that. But generally, if you're in a forest, I mean, you know, without infrared or something like that, how are you going to see a Bigfoot in the middle of the night? Be hard.
You're not.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, Kev, if I put on a pair of black Carhartt coveralls and a black a ski cap, are you going to see me walking around in the woods in Vermont at night?
No.
Absolutely not. I'm just going to disappear in there, and if I'm not making a lot of noise, you're not even going to know I'm walking next to you.
Right. Now, you're not suggesting that Bigfoots wear Carhartts, though.
Well, they might. I mean, it's rugged outerwear. You know what I mean? It's all about saving the fur, brother. It's all about saving the fur. There's nothing like a well-groomed Sasquatch.
That's got chilly up there, too, Hey.
You told me Killington was the coldest place you've ever been. Those poor guys got to live there.
Seems like a good idea all of a sudden. All right, we're going to go out to the southwestern U.S. to maybe one of our listeners with the coolest name. This comes in from Blaze.
Oh,
yeah, Blaze in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay.
And Blaze says, I would like to hear your take on the UFO phenomena. Well, that's a timely note.
Wow.
He says, I have heard you speak of your own encounters, but you never expound upon it. Loving the Bigfoot and keep the ball rolling. You can do no wrong, Blaze.
Wow, that's pretty cool, Kev.
Very cool.
Yeah, talk about timing. We just got done doing the UFO encounter with a Bigfoot at Dead Falls Lake, and he's talking about UFOs. Yeah, maybe someday. I usually talk about UFOs in a kind of ad hoc way, like I shared with my neighbor Tom shared with me, the retired cop, about his sighting.
Yep.
They're unusual things, and they're brief. Descriptions really don't do them justice, but maybe one day I'll pop in with one or two and just talk about them for whatever it's worth in our Other Oddities segment. If we hook up and do something on some type of notable recent UFO encounter, Kev. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, maybe if you just talk a little bit, though, because it has to do with the account that you described about your theories on, kind of the flesh and blood Bigfoot versus what I would call other, which, UFOs and Bigfoot kind of fit in the other. Kind of the accounts of Bigfoot where folks see them moving along on the ground, and then they go over and look, even though they're walking through like a muddy area and there's no footprints at all.
Right. Now, see, I believe that the UFOs are a demonic entity, a demonic presence.
Right.
I don't believe they're inhabitants of some other planet out there in the solar system or another solar system, or that they can access us by traveling through space at rates that we know nothing about. I think they're close to us on a regular basis. We don't have the answers as to what they are and why they use these seemingly technologically advanced crafts and all of this stuff. I do believe this is all part of the deception put out there by Satan and his emissaries. Now, that's really deep, and we can talk about that for weeks. And I can't really spend the time to get into that,
Yeah, no. I think we definitely have to come back to that, though, and maybe we'll expound on it a little bit when we go through one of those accounts of the, kind of the non-flesh and blood, what we believe are the non-flesh and blood Bigfoots.
Right. Yeah, no, yeah. It's a big malaise out there of the how and the why, and there's a lot of opinions, and I've got some of my own, obviously.
Right.
So I just had somebody email us who said he disagrees with me about some Bigfoot being demonic. And look, you're entitled to your opinion, and I can go along with that, but that doesn't change the way I feel.
Sure.
So, I mean, it is what it is,
Yeah, well, everybody has their opinion.
Sure.
Cool.
Well,
all
that's
right.
Incredible.
Well, we're going to go to Italy next.
Wow.
Yeah, buongiorno. This is
Buongiorno.
This is from Tessa in Italy. Yeah. She says, "I love you guys. Ciao bella." She didn't really say ciao bella, but she said, "How far back to known sightings, or how far back do known sightings of Bigfoot go? Really enjoying the cast.
Wow.
I assume she's not talking about the plaster cast on her broken arm.
Yeah. All right, Kev, wrestle with that one, if you will.
Yeah,
How far back you...
Well, we talk about them going back, different accounts. I would say probably back into the 17th century, right? You know, with the Native Americans, and I seem to recall, you know, definitely we talked about in the podcast here a few weeks back a written account in like 1905 or something like that, and then you have the Bauman encounter, which they believe I think is around 1850.
Right.
So I'd say, you know, probably going back a couple of hundred years before that.
Yeah, and look, if they were around then, they were around a long, long time before that.
Exactly.
So I think they've been around for probably thousands of years over here and wherever else.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think these things just popped out of a pond 300 years ago and started stomping around the planet, you know?
Yeah, and if you look at, you know, if you subscribe at all to the Gigantopithecus theory, you know, of the giant Asian ape coming across the Bering Strait land bridge, you know, that's way, way back in time, you know, Ice Age time.
I apologize ahead of time. I'm trying my best to think of the name of the bear that used to be here in North America. The giant bear, Kev. Do you is anything ringing a bell to you when I say giant?
I know what you're thinking of, but
yeah. I hate when that happens because it's going to come to me when the show ends. But look, these bears were on the planet and are now extinct.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I mean, we are talking about a beast that I believe was about 14 to 16 feet tall, had huge head on it and mouth and claws, and were believed to be attacking the then people on the planet and different areas, trying to kill them for food. I mean, can you imagine engaging in mortal combat with some type of monster like that?
Now, are you talking about they called it the short-faced bear?
Yes, the short-faced bear. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a weird name, right, for a giant bear.
Well, because if you look at the drawings of it, it did have like a kind of a pug snout on it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Compared to some of the bears we see today, you know?
Yep.
And the short-faced bear was a freaking monster. Cool. I mean, I couldn't imagine trying to defend myself with a pointy stick or something with that thing advancing on you.
Yeah, they talk about it living back most recently about 11,000 years ago.
Right,
So,
which is not a long time.
no, not in the history of the Earth and our land. Cool. All right. Well, let's leave the short-faced bear, and for our last letter, we're going to go to Mary in Michigan, and she opens up her email in a very interesting way. Dogman, dogman, dogman. My state is going to the dogs. What have you heard, if anything? Love, Mary.
Whoa.
It's an awesome email, Mary.
And did you say Dogman?
3 times.
Kev, that Dogman account we did a while ago, wasn't that in that area or was it Illinois?
Absolutely. No, in Michigan. Upper Peninsula.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, these things keep showing up. And, you know, again, when we have listeners to the show, all of our listeners should make it a point to try to be a little more outspoken with some of the people in your own realm, in your own cliques, you're going to catch a little ridicule for it and a little chiding by your friends. But if everybody made it a point to speak out a little bit about perhaps even saying, I listened to this podcast, Bigfoot Terror in the Woods. Oh, that's awesome. You might, just by saying that, open up a can of worms where somebody says, well, you know what? I saw something really cool one day, or this and thus and so happened to me.
Oh, yeah. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, right, Bill, where one of the listeners wrote in and said, I think it was his uncle, saw your book on the end table. And his uncle said, oh, yeah, I saw a Bigfoot, back in like 1970 or something like that, as I recall.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And that's exactly what we're talking about. That slipped my mind, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. Kind of putting it out there a little bit and see what comes of it.
Yeah.
But you got to be willing to take a little ridicule and, shrug it off, have a couple of yucks. But you never know what's going to come out of it. You may be on the cusp of a great sighting, a great encounter, or some great evidence.
Yeah, I got. I don't think you've seen it, Bill, but I have a license plate holder on the back of my truck that says Bigfoot. He's out there.
Yeah,
and I've had a couple of people stop me, when in a parking lot or whatever, and say, "Hey, tell me about your license plate holder."
I love that stuff, man.
Then I tell them, "You want me to open up the bed cover and show you Bigfoot?" Then they usually run away.
Yeah. Then they run like hell across the parking lot.
All right, Bill. Well, that's our last email for the week. So good show with a couple of sightings up in northern Vermont and then out to the Shasta National Forest for definitely a freaky UFO Bigfoot encounter.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Awesome stuff.
And remember, folks, I'm working on these audiobooks. I just finished Volume 2, reviewing it. That should be up and loaded within like a 3 or 4 week period, I would hope. And the others I keep working on. And you know what? Until we meet again, remember, always carry more gun than you think you're going to need. Sleep tight.